I still remember the exact moment everything changed in our home, and even now it feels strange thinking about how one small accident can reveal secrets you never expected to see. My name is Laura. I'm 43 years old, and for the past 6 years, I've been married to Daniel, a hardworking man who spends most of his time at the office trying to give our family a comfortable life. And with him came his son Ethan, who was 12 when I first met him, and 17 now, a quiet, thoughtful boy who never caused trouble and mostly stayed in his room, playing music, studying or chatting online with friends. And although I tried my best to be a good stepmother, I always felt there was a small invisible wall between us. The kind that forms when two people are connected by circumstance rather than blood. That evening seemed completely ordinary, the kind of calm weekday night where nothing unusual should happen. Daniel had called earlier to say he would be working late again, something that had become almost routine. And after finishing the dishes, I walked down the hallway to remind Ethan about dinner because he hadn't come out of his room for hours. The hallway was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. And when I reached his door, I noticed something unusual. It was slightly open, just enough to show a strip of light from inside the room. Normally, Ethan kept his door closed when he was studying or listening to music, and for a second I thought about knocking, like I always did, but I assumed he must have left it open intentionally. So without thinking much about it, I gently pushed the door wider and stepped inside, and what I saw made me freeze completely. Ethan was sitting on the edge of his bed with his laptop open, but he wasn't doing homework or gaming like I expected. Instead, his face was pale and tense as he stared at the screen, and scattered around him were papers, photographs, and what looked like printed emails. And when he suddenly noticed me standing there, his expression changed instantly, like someone who had been caught guarding a secret for far too long. He slammed the laptop shut and quickly gathered the papers into a pile. But it was too late in the brief moment before he hid them. I had clearly seen something that made my stomach tighten. One of the photographs on the bed showed my husband Daniel standing beside a woman I had never seen before. The two of them smiling closely together in a way that looked far more personal than casual. And before I could even process the shock, Ethan whispered, "You weren't supposed to see that," his voice trembling in a way I had never heard before. The room felt heavier than usual, like the air itself had thickened with unspoken truth, and I carefully closed the door behind me before asking him what was going on. Trying to keep my voice calm, even though my heart was pounding, at first he refused to speak, staring at the floor as if deciding whether he should trust me or keep everything hidden. And after what felt like a long silence, he finally sighed and rubbed his hands over his face, admitting that for months he had been noticing strange things about his father, late nights that didn't make sense, secret phone calls, messages that appeared and disappeared quickly when someone walked into the room. And curiosity had slowly turned into suspicion. So one evening, he had done something he now regretted. He checked his father's laptop while Daniel was in the shower. What he found opened a door he wished he had never touched, dozens of emails and pictures with the same woman. Plans to meet during business trips, and conversations that made it painfully clear that my husband had been living a double life. And Ethan had been secretly gathering proof ever since. Not because he wanted to hurt anyone, but because he didn't know what else to do with the truth he had discovered. Hearing this from a 17-year-old boy broke something inside me, because I realized he had been carrying a burden no teenager should ever carry, watching his parents' marriage slowly unravel without anyone noticing the weight on his shoulders, and suddenly the awkward distance that had always existed between us disappeared, but replaced by a quiet understanding between two people who had just learned the same painful secret. I sat beside him on the bed, and for a moment neither of us spoke, both of us staring at the evidence spread across the mattress like pieces of a puzzle we never wanted to solve. And Ethan finally looked at me with a mixture of guilt and relief, saying he had planned to tell me eventually, but never found the courage. He was afraid of destroying our family, afraid of being the reason everything fell apart, and that fear had kept him silent for weeks. In that moment, I realized the real reason he had been isolating himself in his room. It wasn't teenage moodiness like I had assumed. It was the loneliness of knowing something terrible while pretending everything was normal, and the strange accident of walking into his room without knocking had finally forced the truth into the open. Something neither of us had planned, but perhaps both of us needed. Later that night, we carefully gathered the photos and emails back into a folder, agreeing that rushing into confrontation would only create chaos, and for the first time since I had become part of this family, Ethan and I felt like allies instead of strangers connected by marriage. Sitting together quietly while the house remained empty and silent around us, both of us realizing that the moment I stepped through that half-open door had changed our lives in ways we couldn't yet fully understand. Because sometimes the smallest mistake, like forgetting to lock a door or forgetting to knock, can reveal truths that were hidden in the shadows for far too long, truths that force people to grow closer even while everything else around them begins to fall apart.